Michael Myers. He doesn't speak, doesn't run, and doesn't need to. He attacks with silence. And that's what makes him terrifying. In the 1978 movie Halloween, Myers is introduced as a 6-year-old boy who murders his sister on Halloween night. 15 years later, he escapes a mental institution and returns to Haddonfield, Illinois, wearing a pale, emotionless mask and armed with a kitchen knife. What makes Myers so chilling is how blank he is. He doesn't kill for revenge or gain, he simply kills. Psychologist Dr. Loomis calls him pure evil, and that's the key to understanding him. Myers isn't human in any emotional sense. He doesn't respond to pain, he doesn't hesitate, he watches silently, always lurking just out of frame. This behavior gives the feeling that he's less of a person and more of a force, like death, walking slowly toward you, inevitable and inescapable. What sets Myers apart from other horror villains is the total lack of motive. Unlike Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, there is no backstory explaining why he turned evil. That void makes him scarier. The original Halloween script even refers to him as the Shape, stripping him of identity. He doesn't have personality traits or quirks, he doesn't toy with victims or speak in riddles. Instead, he stands still and stares, often from a distance, through windows, across streets, from behind bushes. This quiet presence builds tension, especially when the audience sees him, but the characters don't. The fear comes not from what he says or does, but from knowing he's there, watching, waiting. Director John Carpenter used minimalism to terrifying effect. He kept Myers in the shadows, only showing flashes of his mask. The music, just a simple piano riff, amplifies every slow chase, turning quiet moments into dread-filled sequences. One of the most iconic scenes happens when Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, believes she's killed him. But then, in a single unbroken shot, Myers silently sits up in the background. His movements are smooth, almost robotic, making him feel unnatural. You're not watching a man, you're watching something unstoppable. Actor Nick Castle played Myers in the original film, and his portrayal was crucial. Castle wasn't a horror actor. He was actually a friend of Carpenter's who'd never acted before, but his performance nailed the character's unnatural stillness. Castle gave Myers a distinct walk, slow, stiff, and deliberate, like he never had to hurry. This pacing created the illusion that no matter how far or fast someone ran, Myers would eventually catch them. Later actors tried to imitate Castle's movement, but many fans still consider his version the most effective. Ironically, Castle was paid just $25 a day for his work, despite creating one of the most enduring horror icons in cinema. The mask itself was a lucky accident. Production designer Tommy Lee Wallace bought a $2 William Shatner Captain Kirk mask from a costume shop, spray painted it white, widened the eye holes, and reshaped the hair. The result was a blank, unreadable face, neither smiling nor angry. That neutrality turned the mask into a mirror for the audience's fears. It made Myers feel like he could be anyone and anywhere. Myers' power isn't in speed or strength, it's in silence. In one scene, he pins a teenager to a wall with a knife and then tilts his head slightly, like he's admiring a piece of art. There's no emotion, no thrill, just observation. This moment perfectly captures his menace, detached, efficient, and unnervingly calm.
Sorry for stopping your video, but you really should subscribe.
Tommy DeVito. He's 5'4" with a .38 caliber temper. One second he's your buddy at the bar, the next he's dragging a body into the woods. Tommy DeVito, as played by Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, is the kind of character that hijacks every second of screen time with a volatility so raw it feels like a live wire in your lap. He's short, sharp, and homicidally unpredictable. A man who turns laughter into terror in one breath and makes even the most hardened criminals hold their tongue. What makes Tommy so terrifying isn't just his violence, it's his randomness. You don't know if he's gonna crack a joke or crack your skull, and the scariest part, sometimes he does both at the same time. Tommy is based on a real-life gangster named Thomas DeSimone, but Scorsese and Pesci fine-tuned the character into something even more dangerous. Tommy isn't just a hothead, he's a time bomb with no timer. You're never given a clear countdown. One second he's buying you a drink, the next he's beating a man to death for saying the wrong thing. His sense of power comes from fear, not respect. Unlike other mobsters in the film who play politics or strategize, Tommy skips all that. He's the only character who kills because he feels like it. That's what separates him from someone like Paulie or Jimmy. While others have rules, Tommy only has reactions. Joe Pesci's performance is what weaponizes that unpredictability. He keeps his body tight, his eyes darting, his voice bouncing between cheerful and deadly without warning. Most of Tommy's power comes from his small size being offset by sheer force of will. You're not afraid of him because he's big. You're afraid for yourself because he's unstable. One perfect example is the funny how scene. The lines were mostly improvised. Pesci brought the idea from a real experience he had as a younger man when he accidentally offended a mobster with a compliment. In the scene, scene, Tommy pretends to be offended when Henry calls him funny, forcing the whole room to freeze. That manipulation of tension is what Pesci excels at. He builds a rhythm, then breaks it, then breaks you. Tommy's killings are never clean or justified. He shoots Spider, a teenage errand boy, just because the kid talked back. He kills Billy Bats not for business, but because Bats mocked his past as a shoeshine boy. And even then, Tommy can't let it go. He doesn't just kill Billy. He stomps him, stabs him, shoots him, buries him, and then jokes about it. That level of overkill isn't just physical, it's psychological. Tommy has to erase his enemies, not just silence them. And the more you realize that, the more terrifying he becomes. The studio was initially hesitant to cast Joe Pesci as Tommy due to concerns about his age, and director Martin Scorsese actually had to persuade a reluctant Pesci to take on the role. Pesci was so intense during the shoot that some crew members thought his off-camera behavior was method acting, but it wasn't. He was just channeling a character he understood too well. Tommy isn't some comic villain, he's a reflection of unchecked ego, of what happens when violence and insecurity are left alone in a room together and then given a gun. Freddy Krueger. He doesn't chase you in the woods or break into your house. Freddy Krueger gets you where no one else can, inside your dreams. He attacks from within your own mind, where the rules of reality no longer apply and fear has full control. Freddy doesn't just stab, he plays. He toys with victims, turns their fears into illusions, and bends the dream world around them until death feels like a twisted joke. You don't escape Freddy by locking your doors, you escape Freddy by not sleeping, and that's exactly what makes him unstoppable. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy starts as a burnt man with a glove of knives, but by the second film, and especially by the third, Dream Warriors, he evolves into something more sadistic. He's still violent, but he's also theatrical. He shapeshifts, mocks his victims, and turns their worst insecurities into literal death traps. If you're afraid of needles, he becomes a syringe-fingered monster. If you dream of TV stardom, he slams your head into a screen. Each kill is personalized, and by the time you realize it's happening, it's too late to wake up. Freddy doesn't kill fast, he kills creatively. That's what makes him terrifying even when you're not asleep. Robert Englund's performance gave Freddy a face, a voice, and a personality, all things slasher villains typically avoid. Unlike Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, Freddy talks. And not just talks, he taunts, jokes, growls, and laughs in a way that turns each murder into a performance. Englund uses exaggerated body language, arched back, wide arms, and expressive facial gestures to make Freddy seem like a showman. But there's rage behind the humor. You're watching a man who enjoys what he's doing, who finds art in murder. And Englund manages to balance charm and cruelty without ever making Freddy seem likable. He's funny, but never safe. The character's backstory adds the horror. Freddy was a child killer in life, burned alive by angry parents after he escaped legal punishment on a technicality. But death didn't stop him. He returned through dreams, a supernatural loophole that made him even more powerful. He wasn't cursed, he was granted access to dreams by a group of dream demons who gave him eternal life in nightmares. That mythology, introduced in later sequels, expanded Freddy's power far beyond Elm Street. Now he could reach anyone who remembered him. The fear of Freddy was what kept him alive. What most fans don't know is that Robert Englund was never the studio's first choice. Producers originally wanted a stuntman to play Freddy, thinking the makeup and gloves would be enough. But Englund auditioned anyway, wearing cigarette ash under his eyes to look tired and pale, and won them over with his eerie presence. He studied old silent film villains to create Freddy's movements. In that iconic glove, it was conceived by director Wes Craven, who drew inspiration from his cat clawing at furniture and a primal fear of animalistic attacks to create a weapon that was an extension of Freddy's identity, not just a tool. Patrick Bateman. He is a fictional character who blends privilege, precision, and psychopathy into one of the most disturbing portraits of modern evil ever put on screen. Played with icy precision by Christian Bale, Bateman is the kind of monster that hides in plain sight. He is a wealthy, well-dressed investment banker in 1980s Manhattan, obsessed with skincare, business cards, and Phil Collins. But behind the routine lies a man who murders for no reason, feels nothing, and blends in perfectly with the world around him. What makes Bateman terrifying isn't what he does, it's that no one notice it. And even if they did, they wouldn't care. Bateman is the central figure in American Psycho, a film that dissects identity, wealth, and the void beneath it all. You watch as Bateman lives out a perfect shell of upper-class success. His apartment is spotless, his suits are tailored, he knows the best restaurants, workouts, and trends, but none of it is real. His voiceover reveals the truth. He feels no emotion, no connection, and no moral boundary. He admits it outright. There is an idea of a Patrick Bateman, but I simply am not there. That's not a metaphor, he means it literally. Bateman kills because he's hollow, and the murders are his way of proving he exists. Christian Bale's performance walks a razor-thin line between comedy and horror. He keeps his face tight, his speech controlled, but lets moments of mania bleed through in just the right places. Watch his eyes when he talks about music. There's real enthusiasm there. But when he kills, his face is calm, almost bored, as if he's punching numbers into a calculator. Bale trained his body to the point point of absurdity for the role, mimicking the narcissistic vanity of Bateman's morning routine. He even drew inspiration from Tom Cruise, specifically Cruise's intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes. That's what makes Bateman so unsettling. He looks like a person, but there's no one inside. Bateman's murders are both brutal and surreal. He hacks a coworker with an axe to the beat of Huey Lewis in the News. He drops a chainsaw down a stairwell while naked and laughing. He kills homeless men, call girls, and anyone who mildly inconveniences him. But the film constantly questions whether these events are real or fantasies. His confessions go ignored. His crimes are erased. He's mistaken for other people so often that even he isn't sure who he is anymore. The horror isn't just that he gets away with it, it's that in this world, identity is so meaningless, nobody notices the difference. As it happens so often in Hollywood, Christian Bale wasn't who the producers really wanted for the role. The studio wanted Leonardo DiCaprio instead, hoping for a more bankable lead. But director Mary Harron fought for Bale, believing only he could play Bateman's emptiness without glamorizing him. Bale went deep into character prep, keeping his voice neutral, avoiding eye contact with crew, and even adjusting his facial skincare during filming to reflect Bateman's vanity. The result was a character who's horrifying not because he's a monster, but because he looks exactly like everyone else. John Doe. In a city drowning in filth, John Doe turned murder into a sermon. He doesn't run or hide, he simply walks into a police station covered in blood and calmly says, "Detective, you're looking for me." In Seven, Kevin Spacey's portrayal of the soft-spoken nameless killer is terrifying because he wants to be caught, but only on his terms. John Doe doesn't kill for revenge or pleasure. He kills for purpose. Each murder is a message, each body a sermon. His victims aren't random. They're sinners in his eyes, and his goal isn't chaos, it's order. Order built on horror, blood, and what he sees as divine judgment. We don't see John Doe's face until 2/3 of the movie's over. Before that, we see the aftermath of his work. A man forced to eat until he bursts. A lawyer made to carve out a pound of his own flesh. A drug addict strapped to a bed for a year. Each murder is one of the 7 deadly sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy, and wrath, carried out with obsessive detail. Doe doesn't just kill, he constructs scenes. He writes in notebooks stacked floor to ceiling. He takes photos. He plans. Every minute of his time is accounted for. And that discipline is what makes him truly dangerous. When Doe turns himself in, it's not an act of defeat. It's the next step in his plan. He demands that detectives Mills and Somerset drive him to a remote location, or else he won't reveal the final 2 victims. Along the ride, he calmly explains his philosophy. He believes society is disgusting, that sin is everywhere, and that his murders, while horrific, are necessary acts to shake people from their apathy. He doesn't yell, he barely raises his voice, but every word he says lands like a hammer. The final twist is what cements John Doe's legacy in movie history. Out in the desert, a delivery van arrives. Inside is a box addressed to Detective Mills. Somerset opens it, and we don't see what's inside, but we know. It's the head of Mills' wife, Tracy. Doe has committed the sin of envy. He envied Mills' life, and now he's pushing Mills into wrath. Mills, despite Somerset's desperate pleading, fulfills the final sin by executing Doe in cold blood. In that moment, Doe wins. He completes his masterpiece. Every death served a purpose, including his own. Kevin Spacey's involvement in the movie was a complete unknown to the audience, as his name wasn't even advertised in the trailers or promotional materials. The producers and director David Fincher deliberately kept Spacey's portrayal a secret to preserve the shock value of his entrance. Spacey agreed, asking not to be billed in the opening credits. His performance, minimal screen time, maximum impact, relies on stillness and control. He barely moves. He doesn't blink much. He never smiles. That restraint turns John Doe into something more than a killer. He becomes a force, a whisper of judgment wrapped in flesh. Anton Chigurh. With a captive bolt pistol and the calm of a man folding laundry, Anton Chigurh dismantles every notion of safety we take for granted. In No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem plays one of cinema's most chilling killers, not because Chigurh is loud or fast or dramatic, but because he's the opposite. He walks through each scene like death itself, certain, calm, and impossible to negotiate with. He kills not out of hate or chaos, but because it's part of the system he believes in. You can plead, you can cry, you can even offer him money, but none of it matters once he's made his decision or flipped his coin. When Chigurh first appears, he's already in custody, but you quickly realize the handcuffs are a formality. He strangles a deputy with such force and quiet detachment that the man's boots leave permanent scrape marks across the linoleum floor. No music, no warning, just raw clinical violence. Then he picks up a captive bolt pistol, a tool used to slaughter livestock, steals a squad car, and pulls over a man on the highway, where he calmly exits the stolen cruiser and murders the man on the roadside with that same air-powered bolt gun. He doesn't carry it for shock value. It's functional, fast, and leaves no time for struggle. No threat, no anger, just inevitability. One of the most unsettling scenes in the film is the gas station coin toss. It's a slow, polite conversation that turns into something suffocating. Chigurh asks the elderly clerk to call it. The man doesn't know why, but you do. If he guesses wrong, he dies. If he guesses right, he walks. Chigurh doesn't react either way. He doesn't even care what side the coin lands on. It's about principle. That's what makes him terrifying. He's not playing with you. He is the game. As he pursues Llewellyn Moss, the man who took a briefcase full of drug money, Chigurh leaves a trail of bodies, bounty hunters, cartel men, bystanders, and when he reaches Moss's wife, Carla Jean, he offers her the same coin toss, but she refuses. She says he has a choice, that the coin has nothing to do with it. Chigurh doesn't argue. He just does what he believes is required. We never see her death, only the outcome. That restraint makes the horror sink deeper. Javier Bardem's portrayal of Chigurh earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 2008. His performance stood out not just for its menace, but for its control. Bardem initially turned the role down. He didn't feel right for it, said he couldn't drive, hated violence, and had a heavy accent, but the Coen brothers saw something perfect in that discomfort. Bardem worked with a dialect coach to slow his voice and make Chigurh's speech sound eerie and deliberate. And the haircut, a stiff, rounded style, was based on real photos from the 1970s and designed to be subtly unsettling. Bardem later joked that it made him look like a sociopath, and that when he first saw himself in costume, he said to the Coen brothers, "I won't get laid for months." Heath Ledger's Joker. He walks into a room like a virus, silent at first, then spreading chaos so fast, no one knows where to look. The Joker, as played by Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, is not a villain who wants power, revenge, or control. He wants collapse, mayhem, anarchy with a punchline. He isn't just an enemy of Batman, he's the full reversal of Batman, where Bruce Wayne is structure, rules, trauma managed into justice. The Joker is impulse, lies, and trauma weaponized. He doesn't care if he wins, he only cares if you lose your grip on who you are. In the movie, he enters with no name, no origin, and no consistent story about how he got his scars. That's on purpose. The Joker is designed to be unknowable. He tells you 3 different versions of his past, but none are confirmed. By doing this, the movie forces you to stop asking where he came from and start watching what he does. And what he does is brutal. He robs a bank using a team, he tricks into killing each other, he crashes a party, holds a knife to Rachel Dawes, sets hospitals on fire, makes a pencil disappear, and tries to turn an entire city into murderers. But the most revealing moment comes during his conversation with Harvey Dent in the hospital. The Joker calls himself a dog chasing cars. He claims he has no plan, but that's the lie. His real trick is convincing you he's random, when every move is precision engineered to break moral codes. Ledger's performance never winks at the audience. His Joker speaks in half whispers and erratic bursts. He licks his lips constantly, a behavior Ledger developed because the prosthetic scars kept drying his mouth. That tick became part of the character's unsettling rhythm. Every movement Ledger makes is unpredictable. He claps slowly and mockingly during Gordon's promotion, fidgets during a hostage broadcast, and delivers lines like punchlines no one asked for. His voice slides between tones in the same sentence. Mocking, growling, then laughing. It's not a performance of madness, it's a performance of someone simulating humanity like it's a game. Behind the camera, Ledger isolated himself in a hotel room for 6 weeks before filming. He kept a diary, in character, writing pages of chaotic thought, dark jokes, and phrases like, "Why so serious?" He even practiced the Joker's voice in the mirror until it felt like second nature, mimicking animals like hyenas to get it just the way he wanted. Ledger stated that another influence came from Malcolm McDowell's Alex. In A Clockwork Orange, Ledger borrowed the idea of cheerful menace, someone who smiles while doing something monstrous. Design-wise, Christopher Nolan and costume designer Lindy Hemming wanted the Joker to look like he dressed himself from a thrift store. His clothes don't match, his makeup is smeared, and his hair is greasy and uneven. That messiness makes him scarier, because it shows he doesn't care how he's seen. His goal isn't to impress or dominate, it's to disrupt your sense of what's normal. Ledger's portrayal of the Joker won him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 2009, posthumously. It was the first Oscar ever given for a performance in a superhero film. What few people know is that Ledger directed some of the Joker's homemade hostage videos himself. Christopher Nolan gave him full control over those scenes, and Ledger leaned into the character's manic energy, shaky camera work, inconsistent lighting, erratic speech. It didn't feel staged, it felt real, like something you were never supposed to watch but couldn't look away from. If you're thinking about subscribing, now's the time. I'm about to post a ton here. Thanks, back to it. Hannibal Lecter. His voice is calm, his manners flawless, and he loves a good Chianti. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played by Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs, is a man of unmatched intellect, perfect manners, and a taste for human flesh. He's a psychiatrist, a culture genius, and a cannibalistic serial killer. But what makes him terrifying isn't just what he's done, it's how calmly he describes it. Lecter isn't unhinged. He's in total control, and when you're in the room with him, you're not. Lecter is introduced not in the middle of a murder, but in a basement cell, where he's being held under high security. Young FBI trainee Clarice Starling is sent to interview him, not to solve his own crimes, but to help catch another killer, Buffalo Bill. But the second she meets him, the power dynamic flips. Lecter stands completely still, makes direct eye contact, and peels back Clarice's past like he's reading a file. He can hear her accent, sense her nervousness, and pinpoint the childhood trauma she's hiding, all within minutes, and all without moving from behind a thick pane of glass. The most iconic scene comes early, as Lecter stands perfectly still in his cell and delivers the line, "A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti." He doesn't raise his voice, he just lets the words hang in the air, then hisses. That line, improvised slightly by Hopkins, became instantly legendary. But it's not just the words, it's the delivery. He doesn't act like a killer, he acts like a host. Welcoming, calm, almost warm. That contrast makes every word more threatening. Later, Lecter proves that even confined, he's still dangerous. After a calculated negotiation, he's moved to a different facility and uses the opportunity to escape. He kills 2 guards, strings one up in a display of theatrical horror, and wears the other's face as a disguise to flee. It's methodical, artistic, and brutal, and when the police finally realize what he's done, he's already gone. Lecter doesn't just outsmart his captors, he does it with a flourish, reminding everyone that civility and savagery are not opposites. In him, they're intertwined. Anthony Hopkins won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1992 for his role as Lecter, even though he appears on screen for just over 16 minutes. It remains one of the shortest performances ever to win in that category. Hopkins based his character's voice and posture on a combination of HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey and real-life criminals he studied. He kept his blinking to a minimum, making Lecter's gaze feel unnatural and dominant. Hopkins also requested that Lecter be standing and waiting when Clarice first arrives, breaking the expected power dynamic from the very start.